dove in without any water wings to save something I thought was worth saving. I saw you tied to a rock in the sand. I tried to be gentle and held out my hand. You said it's no use, it's been so long. I've tried out weapons, I've tried out my songs. In love, there's no love that can't be denied. I only trust people after they've died. I thought I knew what you needed to hear. A sad song, a new film, a picture of beer. I came to bring back the red blood of youth and ended up trapped in a telephone booth. When I touched the rock, it turned into a dove. Floated to surface and vanished above. I turned to look at you, pale from the shock. You turned me into a rock.
That is Scourge of the Sea on WRFL with Water Wings, the track there. And let's see, I'd really want to talk to Andrew English, who's here, about a number of things. Hello there, friend.
Hey, Nick.
Nice to see you.
It's nice to see you too.
Thanks for joining us. First of all, let's mention that. So that's from Scourge of the Sea's Make Me Armored album, which Robby Cosenza played drums on. Am I right?
He played drums and guitar and many other things on that record. That was one of those bands where we all kind of switched around, both on stage and in the studio. So yeah, he did a lot of different things and was one of the songwriters of that band as well.
You know, I've wanted to talk forever about Scourge of the Sea, who I kind of missed. I don't think I lived here at that time, but like, it was such an interesting wellspring of a variety of people came out of that band, right? I mean,
Sure.
By the way, I just want to say right now, I'm going to get so many things wrong today. And part of it's not my fault because Robby played on so many things and he played so many different instruments.
Sure.
But Scourge of the Sea, I mean, also Matt Duncan was in Scourge of the Sea, right?
Matt Duncan played with us sometimes. Yeah, we had, Justin, Craig, and Robby and myself were sort of the core members of the band. But we had, various other people step in. Matt Duncan, as you mentioned, a fellow named Dickie Hayden, who also played and was in a band called Petticoat Petticoat.
Yes, Petticoat Petticoat from Winchester.
Sure. And then Dwayne Lundy also played with us, as well as J. Tom Hnatow, um, and folks like Abby Tackett, who's a cellist, as well as Anna Hess, who some folks might
Yeah.
remember, who's a violinist. Those folks, played with us and toured with us, the two of them, as well as Tom. And some other folks I'm sure I'm also forgetting. But yeah, there were a lot of folks who came in and out of that orbit. But
God, I'll say, and a lot of them are still playing.
sure.
Maybe most or even all of them. I don't know, but yeah, it's really amazing. And was that your? How did you become connected to Robby?
So I was just recently out of college, and I had my first apartment as a young person, and it was on the corner of Sixth Street and Broadway, roughly, in an old house. And I was pretty much a bedroom musician. I didn't really have any aspiration to be a public figure of any sort. Didn't really know. I hadn't really measured my worth as an artist at that point, and I was just playing in my apartment. Robby was house sitting for Mark Heidinger and his wife Tamuna, who lived in another apartment, and stood outside my apartment door in a common area and listened to me play for I don't know how long, and then knocked on the door. Um, and I came out, and I was pretty freaked out. I have to tell you.
Oh yeah.
He was like, "Hey, that sounds really good." I'm playing by myself in my apartment, and Robby was like, "Hey, that sounds really good. Have you ever thought about starting a band?" And so, I've said many times, because it's true, that I don't think I ever would have become, a working musician if it hadn't been for that pulling me out, of my introverted bedroom music making space on my, cassette player.
What an amazing origin story, Andrew. I love that story. That's incredible. And it is funny that like you would have this kind of, I don't know, maybe sort of complicated relationship with performing music to where you are singing and playing music in your place, and then when someone hears it, when Robby Cosenza hears, you're like, wait, what is going on here?
Yeah, and I think like a lot of people, Robby became sort of like a barometer for art, for me. Like he became someone who gave me permission to uh, consider myself an artist. His approval and his support was, integral to me forming that identity, as a young person, growing up in a place that doesn't necessarily push a lot of kids to become touring musicians or painters or, performers of any kind. It was, yeah, him being an older, more experienced musician who had already been like a working, touring musician and just a super gifted player. That just meant a lot. And I didn't really recognize that. A lot of those realizations came to me later. But yeah, it was.
I feel like this is something I've heard from a number of people, that Robby as a kind of, like you said, barometer, or even, almost spiritual permission giver, kind of, if you will. That's a clunkier phrase for sure, but
Yeah, he was.
being heard. He was really good at hearing people in a variety of dimensions, it seems like.
Yeah, and listening. I think the word I would use for him is he was just a fan. He was just an absolute fan of anybody who was doing anything that revealed something about themselves, anything that was true or honest or beautiful. Like I think that he was just an unabashed fan. He always stood up front at every show. He wasn't one of those people who sulked around like a wallflower and tried to be cool. He just he just gave himself to people as a fan, which was so huge for so many of us.
That's Andrew English. He's here, and we're talking about Robby Cosenza. What you're saying reminds me of Robby, who I didn't know Robby super well, but like probably a lot of people, I knew him enough to have wonderful little conversations with him. He was on the show a few times, and he looked like such a rocker like sleeves of tattoos and just like rock star hair, and it could be intimidating until he opened his mouth, and just not, and this kind of just warmth sort of flowed out of him, this sort of genuine curiosity. A lot of times I felt like he would lead with some kind of question of me, and he had this rare knack that he had this rare knack for making you think that you all had known each other for quite a while, even if you just met. I don't know if that makes any sense or not.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And his yeah, so and again, just like that kind of benevolence. I get, benevolence is such a great word that for him, I feel like and I don't shouldn't might we all not strive to be more benevolent on the daily. I know sometimes I'm sneaking out some snark on people, but I wish that I was just benevolent all the time, kind of. And he was a good inspiration for that.
He is. Yeah. He was a lover. I mean, he just, he was, you know, the more he like lived in the world, the more loving it seems like he became. Yeah.
Which is saying a lot for like a touring musician. I think that's something a lot of people. I know I glamorized it kind of in some ways, but you discover maybe if you have a few musician friends that touring can be. It can suck the humanity out of you. I feel like, for some people, not anyone, and certainly not Robby. So yeah, having that quality, I love that the kind of the contradiction, because I think it's true of some of like the early days of RFL. I like to joke about RFL being founded by like Mohawk punk rockers kind of. But what a lot of people, if you're not friends with some of those Mohawk punk rockers, you don't realize that a lot of them are actually quite introverted and quite nice people. Maybe as a rule, basically, and the exterior appearance does not necessarily match your preconceptions of what's on the inside.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was him too in some ways.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah.
Now, when Robby said you should start a band, I mean, what did happen after that?
Basically was like, I mean, he was like, "Do you want to start a band with me?"
Oh man!
Like, he was basically like, "Hey, like that sounds awesome. Let's be in a band." And I was just like, I mean, that's something that was kind of horrifying for me, and it took me a long time to get over the anxiety of performing in front of even a handful of people, let alone hundreds. And so yeah, that was a thing that I had to come around to, and a thing that for me, if I to do what he did would have taken a lot of courage, but I feel like that those qualities that you're naming in Robby probably allowed for him to feel a little bit more at ease just knocking on a stranger's door and saying, hey, want to be in a band. So yeah,
it does beg the question: how many bands was he in already at that point?
well, I mean, I know he was working on Fanged Robot stuff, on his own, and also I'm not sure what iteration of Fanged Robot existed at that particular moment in the fall of 2003, but I know he was also playing in the Apparitions. Those might have been the main ones at that point that I remember, but like I've told many people, or and come to realize over this last several years, Kristen Helmuth is I've started to refer to her as like the Pope of Robby's creative legacy. So Kristen might have some other some other information about those timelines, but those are the bands I remember him being in at the moment.
Andrew English is here, and this is Trivial Thursdays. We're talking about Robby Cosenza, remembering Robby Cosenza also as warmly and fondly as possible as can be done, which is pretty warmly and pretty fondly. Let's take a little break here and play something. I've got most of, let's see, well, we could play something off of, you were talking about this interesting relationship where Robby performed live with Englishmen a lot. Your 3-piece, but he wasn't on the records per se.
I, that just never really worked out. Like it never really lined up. So the records typically involved mostly Justin Craig. So in the role of producer and often also engineer, but Justin usually played most of the percussion and many of the other instruments on the Englishman records.
Let's let's play something off that record anyway, because Justin was tight with Robby too. I don't know if he'll pop in here or not, but and he has gone on to such interesting things in New York, in front of what I call the Lexington music mafia of New York. So if you have a favorite, I have the whole record here, and just shout a track at me. I know I've got things I like, but what would you like to hear, Andrew? Or what do you think would best serve Robby?
Yeah, if I knew the answer to that, I would have already told you. For some reason, I just can't pick something. So why don't you pick for me?
I'd like to pick Angels and Earthworms, because somehow
Actually, almost did that. Yeah.
I just like I like the sound and thematic quality of it. So this is Trivial Thursdays, and we're going to take a little break here and come back with more of the show and more recollections of Robby Cosenza. So stick around. We will be back. This is from the first Englishman album. That's Andrew English who's with us here, and this is Angels and Earthworms.
Grip on the shovel is slipping. Thought I should tell you. There are birds sitting everywhere. Do you know that Saturdays are mowing the grass? The dogwood's filling my lungs, swaying like faint pink Elizabethan aristocrats, to the chipping of gravel and the murder of insects. Rhythmic slings of earth on the cedar drum, they carry on like a chain gang, busting rocks. The ice cubes are already melting. Now I know what you meant when you said it was watered down. Going to go lay down in the hammock once this is over, awake, fade with the smell of dogwood blooms, crushed under the pounding blue pinhole sky, and weightless as the day I was born.
If we'd worked it out a better way, maybe the kill switch would still run, and it would offset these wires and lights that stay on. If all of my friends were better friends, I'd drink with a smile, and I would not waste my best sense of humor on them. It's all in a ride. You can't get from here to there with just a dime. No matter the cost, I'll still get my fill sick and royally sauced. You're awkward and cute, but you're probably 14 with those homemade tattoos. All in all, you make it work and you say that it's alright. Mechanical, if the right side's black, I'll make the left side white. If we worked it out a better way, all my tears would be good, and they would offset these wires and lights that stay on. If all our friends were better friends, I'd drink with a smile, and I would not waste my best sense of humor on them. It's all in a ride. You can't get from here to there with just a dime. And no matter the cost, I'll still get my fill sick and royally sauced. It's all up to you. You can lay there and wait, or you can pull me through. I could pick my old man out of the lineup, probably, and I would have unlocked the 10 different doors if I'd have had 10 different
This is Trivial Thursdays on WRFL, and I'm happy to be with you here. That was the Fanged Robot with Awkward Cute. And lots of buttons to push here. We are joined by Andrew English at the moment on the show. We're talking about Robby Cosenza and the many, many lives that he touched. So we heard a Fanged Robot track there, and then before that, what did we hear?
Before that, we heard an Englishman track called English Performs.
That's right.
Yeah.
Andrew, thanks for being here and sharing your fondness and love for Robby. The Fanged Robot stuff, which is on Bandcamp, some of it, and there's this fabulous new collection that's coming out too. And that was basically all Robby. Does Robby playing most everything on that stuff?
So the two records that are coming out are different. They were made in different eras. The most recent one um, was a full band effort where Robby was playing. I'm not sure what instruments, but potentially guitar. He was definitely doing vocals, but I know that J. Tom Hnatow, Scott Wilmuth, and Jimmy Early were, I think, the core of that band. I know that Daisy Helmuth also sang on a track, um, but the first record of the double vinyl that's coming out on Saturday was a record that Robby essentially played, I think, most of the instruments on, or a lot of the instruments on, but produced with Dwayne Lundy at his studio. And I know that Justin Craig was also involved in some of the work of that record. But it's one that we've been waiting to hear for maybe a decade.
Wow, that's interesting.
So, and it's currently my favorite record of all time.
Aw. Oh, I can't wait to hear it. Now, maybe you can help me sort of let people know who may not know about this event that's happening. It's happening Saturday, right?
It is. It's happening Saturday, and I believe it starts at 7 o'clock. The doors will open at 6. It's an indoor show at the Burl, and it is a show that's going to include as many of Robby's friends, loved ones, bandmates, and family members as possible on stage, performing Fanged Robot songs, Scourge of the Sea songs that were attributed to Robby. There's going to be a Pontius Copilot song also that's going to be performed. But anything Robby touched is fair game in terms of his creative work over the years. And so it's going to be, yeah, it's going to be hard, but it's going to be a real joy as well.
Yeah. You know, there's, I feel like grief gets a bad rap. That may sound weird, but it's important to like work through this stuff. And I know, you know, after the loss of Robby, which was around when, I'm not sure when, but I knew it would take a while for people to be ready to, I mean, it was palpable, like in town, I felt like. And there were just so many people that loved him. And I knew that it was going to take a while, maybe forever, kind of, to be able to talk about it. But to put together something like you're doing on Saturday it's daunting. I would imagine that it feels daunting in some ways.
Well, we would have to talk to Kristen Helmuth and Rebecca Rigo about that because they've been doing the lion's share of building the framework, for the show that we're just going to kind of dip into and perform. But they deserve so much of the credit. I know that J. Tom Hnatow has also been doing a lot of work to provide, backline and, to make sure that things go off without a hitch. But it's going to be a multimedia experience with video in between sets. It's going to be something, that you can only experience by being there. It's going to be pretty unique in terms of like a show going experience. So.
Yeah. That is, and this is when the the new record, the Fanged Robot record, is something that I think I'm not sure if people had to order it or if there will be some others for sale.
There will be. So there was Robby's birthday was this past week, and there was a birthday party that was also a listening party at Pop's Resale on Leestown Road, who will also have the record for sale, and people were able to purchase the record at that listening party early. So, but I think that the record, there were only 200 pressed, and it's a double gatefold vinyl with front cover and back cover artwork that are two different paintings that were done by a local painter named Lina Tharsing, who's also a tremendously gifted artist, and who worked hand in hand with Robby to create those two images that he saw in his mind for the front and back covers of this record. So it's a really special like object, as well as being a beautiful record. So there's also inserts, and I don't know if you know this about Robby, but he was an avid appreciator of everything that went into putting together a physical package that held music, whether it was a cassette, you know, a CD or a vinyl record. And so, you know, everything he touched was done to his specifications. And so was this, you know. So his hands are all over it, and it's really a one of a kind thing. So
that's Andrew English, and you know, something that I feel like comes up implicitly or explicitly frequently with Robby, and we've talked about it some, is the sacredness with which he held music. It was just, I mean, it was the higher for him, it seems like, and it just feels like he was always in the process of honoring music with a capital M.
Yeah, and you know, the way that he went about his life, the way that he consumed music and shared music was it was so inclusive and curious. Like his I feel like his approach to people, and especially to people involved in any sort of music universe, was, I mean, I don't think it's exaggerating to say it was Christ-like. Like his approach was, you know, everyone's welcome. It was kind of like the best aspects of like what churches aspire to offer. You know, Robby did that, like, you know, at bars, dive bars, and music venues, and you know, festivals all over the country. You know,
Dive bars, the holiest of places.
it can be. Yeah.
Andrew English is here, and we're going to be joined in a minute by Tom Hnatow, who has showed up. But Andrew and I, we pulled off a little something here, right? You got there's a Scourge of the Sea record, a new Scourge of the Sea record, and we managed to work this. We're like, I've got it, Andrew. I'm ready. So you've got a track from this. This is something that's been quite a while in the making, right?
Yeah, that's true. And Tom could speak on this as well, because Tom engineered this song. Tom
excellent.
worked really hard on this particular track. This was probably one of the most complicated songs to figure out on the record. And yeah, I think it turned out pretty amazing. Maybe Tom can say a few words about it before we put on Tank of Water.
I hope so too, and I think that he is just exactly in time with his technology to do so. Hi, Tom Hnatow. How are you?
Hello.
Perfect. Your timing is incredible. You're like some sort of like Zoom daredevil. Like
It's true. Yeah, I come
in.
swooping in.
And get everything going just in time. So I don't know if you could hear some of what Andrew was saying just then about the new Scourge of the Sea record, and your role in that.
I was fighting with audio, as is my usual daily job.
Tom, you had a... Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, Tom, I just sent Mick a Tank of Water, and I told him that you might be able to say a few words about that, because you recorded it and worked pretty hard on that one in particular. And it was one of the more tricky ones to kind of gather the sound for.
Well, I remember we had a sample. It started with a sample that Robbie really liked, and we manipulated it. I don't totally remember the process, but I remember us playing it over my stereo speakers and setting up a bunch of mics in the room and sort of recapturing the sample. And we did that a couple times and kind of manipulated it and made it weird, and then ended up kind of basing the track around that. But I think it was like, I mean, Andrew, didn't you guys record that in like the song was from 2008, 2009? It was an older song.
I'd never even heard it.
Am
I
I?
think it was one that, yeah, it was one that Robbie brought to the Scourge record that he had, and he was like, "Yeah, I think we should do this one." So I hadn't heard it before, but yeah, it's pretty cool. I don't think he's got a whole lot of songs that are exactly like that.
No, it's a really unique. It's definitely sort of a unique one in there, in that it's almost sort of like, I mean, it's almost like a hip hop based thing where it's like a very much like a sample thing and then added layered stuff on top of it. And it was a really fun one to record too, just a kind of, throw things at the wall and see what they stick day.
Yep.
That seems like a perfect segue into the song itself. I've never heard on anywhere, I suppose, at this moment. This is
Premiere.
Tank of Water from the upcoming Scourge of the Sea record. So let's check this out, and then we'll be back with Tom Hnatow and Andrew English, and we'll continue celebrating Robby Cosenza. So stick around. This is Trivial Thursdays, and this is Scourge of the Sea with Tank of Water. We'll be back.
Is there a place for me? Did they save a place for me? Well, I've got a huge tank of water. I'll just come back another day. 'Cause I want it clean, and I want to be proud. Praised by my huge tank of water, my huge tank of water. Now all these metal boxes, all in a line by line. I can't just wind my hose around them. I mean, I can barely drive. And now I hear the bells chiming 1, 2, 3 for my huge tank of water and the ghosts of sons and daughters. They're looking out for me. Is he looking out for me? Is she looking out for me? Well, I'm looking out for you, and you're looking out for you too.
Yeah.
You're on the edge, aren't you? I can see that you're just on the edge. If you take a step forward and look down, you'll see just a few feet off of the ground, and it ain't that far to fall. No, it ain't that far to fall. No, it ain't that far to fall. Well, I guess it's true. It's us versus them. I bet if we smash our brains together, we can do the work of 50 men. 'Cause we want it clean, way up on high, praised by our huge tank of water, our huge tank of water. They looking out for me. Is he looking out for me? Is she looking out for me? Well, I'm looking out for you, and you're looking out for you
WRFL's programming is made possible in part by Pops Resale. Pops offers a selection of vintage records, clothes, and other collectibles. Pops is located in the Meadowthorpe Shopping Center on Leestown Road. For more information, you can visit popsresale.com. WRFL thanks Pops Resale for supporting college radio.
This is Trivial Thursdays on WRFL. It's 11 o'clock in the morning here at WRFL Lexington. Sorry, I know I just said that, but you have to get it exactly right for the FCC or they come over here. We're here with Andrew English and also Tom Hnatow. We just heard a track from the new yet-to-be-released Scourge of the Sea album, which was magnificent. As you mentioned before, that was a Robby track, and Scourge of the Sea was a band that had multiple writers. So I think you were saying that this song maybe has been around for quite a long time. Is that right? Do I remember that right?
I think Tom's right in saying that that song has been around for a while, but I had no knowledge of it. But go ahead, Tom. Yeah.
No, I was going to say that was actually surprising. I thought, I know it was an older song that he'd sort of been kicking around. I feel like you all, when you all were in the studio, you all definitely like fleshed it out a little bit more. I know I'd heard it, but also I have a terrible memory, so I could be totally wrong on that one.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds magnificent. And so what kind of, so Robby was again, in some ways, everyone in Scourge of the Sea was a multi-instrumentalist, also in the way that they were. but Robby so often did that. And I'm curious, like, Tom, what was it like to work with Robby to like get to sort of articulate the vision of whatever it was that he was trying to lay down?
I mean, anytime that I was sort of lucky enough to work with Robby in the studio in any capacity, it was mostly sort of hanging on for dear life and trying to keep up with his ideas. He liked to work. He worked really quickly, and would have these off the wall ideas that seemed potentially like really bad ideas at the moment. There's like in that last track, there's those kind of weird synths doing like and I remember him. He would do things like that, and you'd be like, I think this is sort of maybe not good. And then he'd put another one in, and then there'd be a percussion thing and something else. And you're like, oh, this is the whole idea now. And so, just a lot of kind of just really trying to work as quickly as possible, and hang on for dear life, really.
That's Tom Hnatow. Is there anything you want to add to that, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, just that, like, what Tom just described is a thing that I've never met very many people who are like this, but Robby he was really proficient as a percussionist, but he also could envision sound. Like, he could envision these entire like landscapes and these entire like interwoven parts, and then he could tell other people what to do in order to create that vision. Like, I don't personally have that ability. Like, I think that's a really rare kind of thing to be able to imagine colliding sounds of instruments that you aren't even like an expert on. So that was something that always just totally blew me away about him. So he could see that, like Tom was describing, and then kind of make it happen in the real world with the help of like other people's bodies and brains playing instruments.
That's Andrew English. This is Trivial Thursdays. I've been watching lately, you guys probably maybe watched some of, I don't know if anyone watched all of the Beatles Get Back. Someone say no.
No, I said no. No, as in the opposite. I've watched it many times, too many times.
And so this is something that I say this as a layman partially, but I feel like a lot of people listening who have no experience with recording studios whatsoever, I want to just put the word courage out there and talk about courage when it comes to making choices in musical situations, especially when you're in the studio. Tom, some of what you were just saying had to do with something I think that musicians in the studio encounter maybe a lot, which is like, should we do this thing? No, it sounds stupid. Don't do that. I want to do it anyway, and you do it, and it winds up being the thing. And I'm curious if you want to talk about Robby and music in terms of the courage to make choices that maybe might feel murky at the time, but you feel good about later.
I always feel like, and Andrew can speak to this too, like, I mean, really, and it was really one of the great joys of my life to be around for the recording of this latest Scourge record. Just watching people work in the studio, and I don't ever feel like Robby ever had a murky idea. I don't think I really feel like his ideas were very fully formed, and I mean, sort of like Andrew was saying, I don't know a lot of people like that. I know that a lot of times I'll sort of be like, I have a vague idea, let's push, and I hope somebody comes up with something brilliant, and cool. Now I feel like I can take credit for having a good idea, and Robby was really fearless in the studio, and he would get things very quickly, and also just had this ability to, like, if you had him in a room with a songwriter, his understanding of song was so amazing that he would say, "Oh, well, you said this on the second chorus, and so I'm doing this thing with the beat here." And, like, I mean, God forbid the word time or clock was in a song, because there would always be like a clock sound. You'd have to be like, please don't make the ding, or but like, uh, there was sort of a really a clarity and a focus that I really don't know a lot of other people who have that, and also just like the pure, absolute fearlessness of following a path of an idea that may end up, because sometimes you're like, well, yeah, that was a dumb idea, and we're not going to speak of it ever again. But that's the only way that you then get to something that you're like, oh, that was actually a brilliant idea, and really sort of something beautiful and outside the box, and all those things. Hello, Mark.
That's Tom Hnatow, and Mark Charles Heidinger is here. Hello.
Hi, Mick.
Thanks so much for joining us. It's been an awfully long time since we've seen one another.
It's been a long, long time. How are you, buddy?
I'm just fine. You're chiming in from the West Coast, am I right or not?
No, I'm in, I'm the west coast of Kentucky. I'm in Louisville.
That was about to be my next joke, actually. Okay, well, yeah. So apparently, long enough that I thought you were on the West Coast. So west of here.
My heart is on the west coast, but I am here in Kentucky.
Mark, you know the topic, and
Yeah.
and as I said earlier, this is completely unscripted. Basically, I'm the one that gets to be wrong a lot. And that's my job in the show, but mostly my job is to just kind of roll out the welcome mat for people who were very, very fond of Robby Cosenza. I guess maybe we could sort of extend what we were talking about just now, which is working in the studio with Robby. Is that something you did?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to do a lot of that with Robby. Hi, Andrew. Hi, Tom.
Hey, Mark.
Is it the four of us right now?
That's what it is right now.
Okay, all right. That's manageable. uh, yeah, I met Robby in 2002, and we started playing music together in 2003. And I was lucky enough to spend time with Robby in the studio for 20 years, 20 plus years, and outside the studio as well. And I probably won't say anything that hasn't been said about Robby a dozen times, but he was as singular a human being as you'll find. I've said for years that for me, meeting Robby was hugely important, not just because he became one of my closest friends, but I learned more from him about music and rock and roll, and the spirit of keeping it real and all of the other things. He taught me so much. It was like Robby was just like an ongoing graduate course in biblical rock and roll. He oozed it. It was not something he put on and took off. He was always Robby, and he was uncompromising but kind. And I learned more. I think I learned more from Robbie than probably anyone I've ever played music with. I think it's pretty safe to say. Um, and I will probably continue to learn from him, you know, from the cosmos, what have you. He taught me a lot, and I love him dearly. Miss him every day.
That's Mark Charles Heidinger. Thank you, Mark. A lot of what you're saying I don't know if I read this somewhere. I think I did, in some remembrance maybe that was written, but it was, I think it had to do with this kind of ongoing semi joke that Robbie would be like, doesn't anybody want to rock? Does that ring a bell at all?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
he's famously saying there's only one way to rock. I mean, um, yeah. Uh,
I mean, he's so often operated as a sort of nuanced percussionist in certain situations, but underneath
yes,
of it
but
all was the rocker, right?
I think that side of Robbie, the understated side, really emerged um, when he became a consummate studio drummer. He very much, I think, approached music from like a punk ethos. Um, he was a Ramones disciple, um, as in addition to being a huge, you know, uh, Dylan fan. And I think that side, the side of him that gravitated toward Bob Dylan and resonated with Bob Dylan, I think that side really flourished. And the Beatles, sorry, my animals are going crazy here. That side really started to shine the more time he spent in the studio. And I was fortunate enough to sort of intersect with him when he became sort of Lexington's go-to um, studio uh, drummer slash percussionist, what have you. I mean, that side of him, I think, really took off around '07, '08. Does that sound about right, Tom?
It seems about right. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, he ended up making how many, like 100 records? You all made
Oh,
100,
I mean,
records in the studio together.
way more. I think Robbie and I figured out have played on about, I don't know, somewhere between 200 records ish.
Yeah,
I mean, that could
sure.
be singles or whatever. And I think,
Yeah.
I think Robbie and Dwayne probably 1,000 songs at least. So it's, I mean,
hmm
massive, massive, massive numbers of things, and you know, everything from stripped down to full on rock and roll.
Yeah, at any given point in time, Robbie could and would be in three or four wildly different bands. From uh, projects he did with me, Scourge, These United States. Um, what was that Boston like bucket rock blues band he played in for so long? What were they called, Tom?
Tarbox Ramblers, he
The
played in
Tarbox
for
Ramblers.
quite a while. Fantastic,
Yeah,
absolutely
fant-
amazing band. Uh,
fantastic band, and
do you
nothing, nothing like any of the other bands that we just mentioned. So
do you remember how he got that gig? You were
I
there.
don't, I don't remember.
It was at IOTA. It was at IOTA, this amazing club in Arlington, Virginia, and their drummer, I think, got sick. There was something that happened. They showed up without a drummer, and
Right,
it
right,
was
right,
a
right.
These US show, and the Michael said, man, is there any chance you'd want to play? Have you ever listened to our stuff? And Robbie said, yeah, man, absolutely. It's kind of like sort of like psych rock and roll, kind of like just throwing words out and having. And he said, no, man, we're just kind of like a blues band. Like he clearly never went. And he was like, well, we'll see how it goes. And then immediately,
Yeah,
of course, just absolutely crushed the show. And then at the end of the show, they were like, well, we're firing our current drummer now, and
yeah.
if you want this gig, it's yours. But yeah, it was like
That
just
sounds,
absolutely lied his way into a gig, just with utter self-confidence.
yeah. Well, I mean, he oozed it.
Yeah.
I've wondered a number of times as I become more and more aware of just how many records he was involved in. And I found this like anxiety kind of creeping up that like there's got to, this could be true for anyone, but like, it's like, is there a comprehensive discography? Is it being kept track of? Is there any way, even at this point, to keep track of everything that Robby Cosenza played on?
Not complete, but getting more complete. And it is a mission that I think everyone on this call, and Kristen Helmuth in particular, is very keen on. And we've been working on this, but there's been a years long effort to get Robby's Wikipedia page properly published and properly, sourced and completed. And I know that has been, it's existed in sort of draft form. The gatekeepers at Wikipedia have not been terribly kind to us so far, but I know that in one of the drafts, there was a running discography.
Yeah.
It wasn't complete, but it was getting there. And it is massive. It is a remarkable discography.
I saw Ringo Starr on one list.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. That was with Vanderveer. We sort of stumbled our way into backing Ringo up on a couple tunes on a record he put out 7-8 years ago, and I think Robby belongs.
Did he cross paths? Did he cross paths with Mr. Starr himself, or was this done remotely? Or
the session was done remotely, but Tom and Robby and Rose and I did get to meet Ringo out in LA. We played his birthday party at Capitol Records. I don't know if he still does that, but it was a thing he would do every year on his birthday. They'd have a birthday party at Capitol Records, and different bands would perform Ringo adjacent tunes at this party. And one of the years we were fortunate enough to be one of the bands that, and so we sort of awkwardly met him and his like name dropping entourage. I mean, there's too many people to name that were there. We're just sort of gobsmacked at all of that.
The highlight, though, I think for Robby too, was not just getting to meet Ringo, but also getting to meet Jim Keltner.
Yeah,
and,
we have a great photo.
His favoriteest drummer, and like the two of them just kind of stood in the corner and they started chatting drum stuff, and they were just kind of like hanging out and being very cool. And
I snapped a photo of that. That one of, I'll find it, send it to you, Mick.
Yeah,
but it's Robby standing shoulder to shoulder with Keltner, and truly, I mean, rightfully so. Two of the
absolutely
two of the greatest drummers. I mean, he's in good company, and he belonged in that company. He of all of us, I will say, Robby was the one that I felt like he belongs here. I'm not sure if I belong here, but Robby definitely belongs here. He carried himself in that way too.
And mentioning Jim Keltner, I mean, it is another sort of situation where, again, for I don't want to say casual listeners, but for people that don't keep up with, music nerdery the way maybe some of the people here do, Jim Keltner he's the guy that made so many records as the drummer.
Oh, yeah.
May not know his name. Mm-hmm. And how similar is that to Robby Cosenza?
Oh yeah, you've heard Jim Keltner 1,000 times, whether you know it or not.
Yeah. It gives me goosebumps actually thinking about Robby meeting Jim Keltner.
And he also, I think they both started because Robby had, I just found this picture, I'm going to figure out how to drop it in, but Robby had his aviators on.
Oh yeah.
They were just sort of standing there, kind of both wearing their aviators, which obviously he took from Keltner. And it's like, it was such a nice little, he also believed he belonged there. And that
he did. In a just world, Jim Keltner would have had goosebumps getting to stand shoulder to shoulder
absolutely.
with Robby.
Yes. This is Trivial Thursdays on WRFL, and we're celebrating Robby Cosenza. We're here with Mark Heidinger of Vanderveer and Tom Hnatow. Andrew English is here, and hopefully a few more too. Hey, I've got some. I think I've got the Vanderveer catalog. Mark, if there's anything that you have a particularly fond memory of with Robby, I'm happy to play it.
Oh my!
It's a too big an ask.
Tom has an idea.
I've heard Dig Down Deep it was suggested by Scott Whidden actually as being incredibly meaningful. Go ahead, Tom.
I was thinking holding patterns just because I think that drum part rules so
Yeah,
hard.
I'm with you, Tom.
It's I mean, and I also
Got it.
remember, I'm sure, do you remember the recording of that, Mark? That it was like
It was
it
2 sessions almost, like 2 separate
Mhm.
songs glued together. Yeah,
yeah, but
was
he
incredible.
was sort of one of those where he was like, I have an idea, and then immediately
it was very
executed.
it was very Brian Blades esque in its, well, half of the song was, like
Yeah,
it's
yes.
it was like two very different performances, sort of digitally glued together, which was pretty wild. So I think you're right, Tom. I think that'd be a good one.
I've got it right here. Let's check this out. This is Van Devere. This is Holding Patterns from the Wild Mercury album. And Robby Cosenza holding things together in a variety of ways, as he so often did for so many people. So check it out. We'll be back. This is Trivial Thursdays on WRFL.
Feels like autumn in this gray and listless town, and it seems like 100 years have passed since we made that pact. We were very best of friends. Then we stumbled round the bend, holding hands, holding lines, holding patterns we design. Feels like gambling, like going out on a limb, on a highway with clipped wings, so dizzy from towing the line. You hung me out to dry. I lost count, recounting all the times we were holding hands, holding lines, and holding patterns we designed. W was once a whale, really scaly, shelly, whaley, tumbly, taily, mighty whale.
R was once a little rose. Rosy, posy, nosy, rosy, blousy, grousy little rose.
F was once a little fish. Fishy, wishy, squishy, fishy, and a dishy little fish. L was once a little lark. Larky, marky, herky, larky, in the parky little lark. W!
It really is all that. This is Trivial Thursdays on WRFL, and music from Vanderveer there, Holding Patterns, the track from their album, The Wild Mercury. We are joined by Mark Charles Heidinger of Vanderveer, as well as Tom Hnatow, and we're remembering, discussing, celebrating, toasting Robby Cosenza, who played drums for Vanderveer in a variety of capacities, and that track in particular was chosen. You all both agreed that was a good one. And while we're talking, I will throw up this photo that I got sent, which is this photo of Robby and Jim Keltner, the great session drummer. And so there you have it. This was a very happy moment for Robby Cosenza, right?
Yeah, it was.
At the Ringo Starr birthday party.
Just a random encounter in a hallway. And we, we had our, holy crap, that's Jim Keltner.
Yeah.
Let's see.
We also, sorry, Mick.
No, go ahead.
Oh, well, also sort of the part of that day was that Robby somehow talked, he and I think, did you join us later, Mark, into meeting the great engineer Al Schmidt, who's kind of, just one of the all-timers, who happened to be working on the last Frank Sinatra session
in the B room.
Recorded.
It was
It was the A room. It was the A room.
Oh, was it the A room? Yeah.
That's the A room. Yeah.
That was the A room.
So it was
Wow.
the big, and Robby said,
Yeah.
"Oh, I think there's a guy mixing Sinatra," and then basically, absolutely Long Islanded his way in. As he said, we were listening at the door, and I was like, "Oh, there is definitely someone working on Frank Sinatra, and it's Al Schmidt." And Robby said,
A
"Can we
very
come in?"
young
And he said, "No."
85-year-old Al Schmidt.
Yeah. And
Very 85 years
Robby
young.
somehow, talked him into.
Of course
Basically
he did.
talked about how Robby's love of Billy Joel meant that Robby was a big fan of Phil Ramone, who was worked on a lot of records with Al Schmidt, and Phil and Al and Robby were all, I believe, from Long Island, and so it immediately went from "no, you can't come in" to "wait, where are you from? Whoa, where are you born? Oh, okay, cool, yeah, okay." Well, and then he just finally, and then we were like, "Okay," and he said, "Well, you can come and sit in here, just don't say anything." And he was like, "Yeah, okay." So somehow again, just talked his way into this incredible experience of hearing this little piece.
Yeah, and you were there for
Long Island.
Tom. You and Robby were in there, I think, for 5 or 10 minutes before I stumbled in, and Al could not have been nicer about letting us hear unreleased. What he was replacing. It was Frank's last record. It was the duets record, and I think they were doing a recut where they were taking all the duets out and just having Frank's vocals in the whole record. And then was it a year or two later we saw that record come out, and we all had that, oh my God, we were in the room while he was making that.
We were sitting there while that was happening. Yeah.
Really, truly incredible.
This is Trivial Thursdays. We're joined here by Tom Hnatow and Mark Heidinger, talking about the great Robby Cosenza. And I think Justin Craig is on his way in here too, which is nice to have him joining us. We have, it's hard to even know there's just so many. Tom, I was asking you in a text, you am I right that you toured some? I've seen your posts on Facebook, and you've written some incredibly eloquent posts about your relationship with Robby, and some of that seemed to be on the road. Is that right?
Yeah, we spent. I mean, I sort of got to be this extra. I mean, Mark and I got to tour. I toured with Robby with a little bit with Scourge of the Sea, and then a whole lot with Vanderveer, and a whole lot with these United States. And then after that, we did some Justin Wells, and then Robby and I ended up in Horse Feathers for about 5 years together, and then did a record with that band too. So we spent all of us have spent many hours in the band.
I have this question that keeps coming up because he had such sort of benevolence coming out of him. So I have to flip it to the other side and ask: was there anything that got under Robby's skin?
Yeah.
Mark, go ahead, Mark.
I feel that there's some stories here.
Was there anything that did not? Yes.
Robby, I will say, Robby had a very large unwritten rock and roll Bible of do's and don'ts. And if you ran afoul of that sacred text, you would hear it.
Yes. Also, there was no sacred text to consult, so you just knew when you were doing something wrong.
It only
shorts
existed.
On stage.
Shorts on stage.
Yes. Yeah, shorts on stage.
Barefoot on stage. Yeah.
Barefoot is a no-no.
Oh, shorts. Yeah.
No.
Shorts I get. Barefoot maybe less, but not
no.
acceptable.
There was like basically like no band T-shirts unless it was Robby wearing a Ramones T-shirt, in which case it was acceptable. I don't know. There were a lot of there was an unwritten rule book, and you really only knew that you were breaking the rules when you ran afoul of them.
But he never held it against you for too long. But for that moment he did hold it against you, it was visceral. Nick, I think Justin might be trying to join the call, but only on audio, I believe.
Oh, it says
can't
Justin
do video. Yes.
Okay. Well, it is once he can get in here. I love that. This is a message I've never seen in Zoom before. It says Justin Craig will start video later. It's kind of like, oh, okay. Well, all right then.
Can you hear me?
I can. Hi, Justin.
Oh, cool.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, of course.
Hi, Justin.
I'm wandering through LaGuardia Airport, trying to find a quiet corner.
Thank you for following my instructions to find a quiet place to be on Zoom. LaGuardia is perfect.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. They call it the.
Yeah. It's
Public
not too
Wi-Fi
crazy.
in LaGuardia. Nicely done, sir.
Yeah, I'm doing my best.
Well, we appreciate you joining us so much. I know that you had a long working relationship and friendship. I of course assume with Robby. Do you remember how you all crossed paths originally?
Let's see. I became friends with Andrew English, and we started writing some songs together. Is Andrew still there? Hello, Andrew, if you are.
Andrew had to go install some electrical stuff.
Okay. So I started hanging out with Andrew. Robby lived next door. And actually, I think, Mark, that was your old place, right?
It was. Robby was house sitting for me next door.
Oh.
Andrew and I were, and my wife and I lived across the hall from Andrew in a house on North Broadway.
Okay,
and Robby was house sitting.
Robby was house sitting, and he sort of made friends with Andrew, and they started Scourge, and I was hanging out with Andrew a lot and making music, and he was kind of like, well, we should have Justin in the band. And that was the beginning of that. And yeah, and then
that was the first time that was said a dozen times, we should have Justin in the band. I think at that point then you then joined every band that Robby was adjacent to for the next 10
Yeah,
years, I want to say.
that actually is true.
That's how you joined Vanderveer. That's how you joined these United States.
Yep. Just followed that guy around forever. Um,
We were talking earlier about just, I don't know, kind of the well swing that the wellspring that kind of came out of Scourge of the Sea, and how there were multiple writers in the song, I love bands where there's like multiple people who can really hold it down, not just like the instrument they're playing, but like you've got writers, singers, and I know you're all agreeing with me when I think of the band Styx.
It was the first one that came to mind.
It's the first band that came to mind.
I won't. I'm 49 or 51% kidding. I'm not going to let you know which one. But like, so how did that relationship in Scourge kind of? I'm thinking it sort of articulated itself out to project after project a little bit. Would you say it was? That's kind of what you were saying too, right, Justin?
yeah, I mean, for me, Scourge was like my first major touring experience. I mean, I had been in bands before, but that was like Robby was like, "We're booking a tour. We're putting out this record. We're going to go on tour for 2 months." I was like, "Okay, get in the van." And it was a very sort of formative time, I think, for all of us. Um, and it sort of kicked me into gear in terms of being a professional musician and wanting to tour and live that lifestyle. And yeah, I don't know if that answers your question at all.
Absolutely, and just anything that leads the way to more discussions is my secret weapon.
Yeah.
Now, Justin, you work in the studio a lot now, right? Are you in New York still?
I am. Yeah, I'm in New York. And I work in I have a studio here that I work in. I do lots of production, mixing, stuff like that. And I have been sort of. Sorry, go ahead. Did I?
Oh, there you are. Okay, you disappeared for
Sorry.
a second. I'm not sure. I thought I did something. So you worked in the studio. I'm sorry, we maybe dropped off about that point. I'm not sure about otherwise because Zoom is sort of a weird witchcraft. Working in the studio with Robby, what was that like?
It was great. I mean, so I was kind of mentored under Dwayne Lundy, and throughout my 20s was really doing a ton of sessions there with Robby. It was kind of like we were Dwayne's wrecking crew or something for a second, and that was also a very formative time, just learning how to produce, as a session musician, forming a sort of musical language with Robby, having played on like a billion songs together. You just start to intuit like what it really is, like a secret language or something. Just, I think that all of us on this call probably had that with Robby, having played with him so much. But in the studio, it's a bit of a different experience, I guess, than touring or something. But yeah.
What were some? Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think we all grew in the studio together. I feel like I can speak for the three of us on the call here. Being in the studio with Robby, to me, it's synonymous with being in the studio with Justin and Tom and Dwayne. We all grew together in the studio and learned so much. I learned so much from Robby in the studio, and I think Robby learned a lot about. I think Robby blossomed in the studio once he got into the idea of playing to a click track, which is a metronome. Once he,
now you say blossom to the idea of that, I have to jump in here because I'm wondering, was a click track not rock and roll for Robby?
Early on, it was not rock and roll to play to a click track.
Go ahead. I just had to jump in there.
Yeah, 2003, 2004, in the Apparitions era, it took a little bit of cajoling to get Robby to buy into the click track. Once he did, like Robbie liked to play. I will say this about Robbie too, and this was very much true of him in the studio and on stage, but he liked to sort of present himself as being a simpleton or dim-witted, and he was usually the smartest person in the room. And when he became, when Robbie the studio musician like really blossomed and flourished, he became a completely different beast. He really was the best of both worlds, because he could be the most magnetic person on stage in a club with 300 people in it, or he could be the most understated, tasteful player in the room in the studio, and really was sort of a two-headed beast in that way.
That seems like a rare quality for me in in musicians. Or I feel like, bands often get in kind of struggles over who's in the front, who's in the back. Not that it's universal, but like it's
Yeah.
rare for someone to have qualities of both, I feel like.
Yeah, it's true. I will say though, if Robbie was in your band, in the photos, you wanted Robbie up front.
You were, yeah.
I wasn't
Everyone
in any
was on-
band, and if I was in a photo with Robbie, I wanted him up front.
Yeah, everyone was in agreement that Robbie needed to be in focus in all the band photos.
Tom, was there something you were going to say there?
No, I was just sort of nodding along with Mark, and the only real, like, for Robbie's ability as a studio person, and just sort of understanding how to manipulate sound. But one of the greatest things was that and obviously very intentionally, because you spend time anywhere and you start learning like the microphones, you start learning the lingo. Robbie never ever learned the name of a microphone ever. So it'd be the same microphone that you've used 8 million times on, and you'd say, hey, can you go shake the tambourine into that 87? And he'd be like, I don't know which one that is. All microphones were Telefunken to him. Every single one, despite the fact that I don't think that either Dwayne nor I ever may have owned one Telefunken over the course of like 20 some years, but he very intentionally never learned the name of a microphone.
And why do you think that is?
Humor. Probably just humor at some point. And yeah, it was always a very charming thing though. It was like, how could you, like, you've lived here, you've made a million records, you've spent so much time here, you've heard this, you should
literally lived there.
Yes, yeah. At one point, yes, you like lived there, and still, yeah. But it was always great, because he'd say, hey, can you go over to the Coles? And he'd be like, I don't know. And it's like, it's that one. You've done this a million times. It's still that one right over there.
This is Trivial Thursdays on
I think
WRFL. Go ahead. I just wanted to throw that in.
I think it's just not very cool. Yeah, so it's not cool to know the names of microphones. That's for nerds.
That seems like a nerdy cool kind of thing, but maybe not rock and roll enough. I don't know.
It's somewhere. It was somewhere in the rule book, clearly.
I think not knowing the name of gear was definitely in the rule book, but Robbie, to his credit, he filled that compartment in his brain with lots of other nerdy information. He could recall personnel and different aspects of like performances on records and moments in like music history, like your biggest baseball nut could recite, the stats on a card, a baseball card, and tell you who batted 58 home runs in 76 or something. Robbie had that kind of encyclopedic recall gift. And Rose, who was also in Van Devere, she shared that skill. Those two had a very special relationship. She came from a completely different world than the rest of us. Came from a traditional folk background and a big folk communal family, but the two of them had this incredible bond together. And their recall of inane musical facts was something. It was a marvel to witness. I felt like a Kentucky dum dum being in the van with those two sometimes.
Now, I could be wrong. Otto Helmuth joins us. I mean, I know I'm right about that, but because I can see him and all his handsomeness. But the sound is more like kind of you woke up 1 second ago, but we'll see. That may just be the Otto signature sound.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What I was going to say was like, again, my experience of Robby was not ever playing music with him, but you talk about this, like, I feel like he had a kind of deep knowledge of lots of stuff. You could like stumble into a conversation about just about anything with him. And I'm calling you out right now because I believe that this was a joke I wanted to make a while ago. But Otto showing up reminded me. I stopped by their house one time and found, I think, Robby and Otto, and I can't remember who else, listening intently to Taylor Swift's Midnight's album, which had just come out. And I was like, I'm going to out you guys for being, right here with the new Taylor Swift album. I'm a huge Taylor Swift fan, by the way. But so like, yeah, so the broad interest, sorry, that one's just a music one again, but like the broad interest in the conversations that happen on the front porch of the Helmuth house, I feel like you could always stumble into something magical. Otto Helmuth, happy to have you on the show.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks for doing this. Yeah, no, I mean, we're Taylor Swift fans. Of course, we grew up with 2 daughters, I lived and breathed.
But on the porch were the Lexington Music Illuminati, not the daughters. It was just
no, but she, Robby liked anything that was, I mean, some people call like music snobs, that kind of energy, but he was not that, he loved everything pretty much. And if it was good, of course, he would like it. So, and she's good. You can't poo-poo Taylor. Come on.
I never would.
Yeah, Robby was not a snob. He was uncompromising, but he was not a music snob.
No.
That's for sure.
Yeah. And Kristen always says that if she has to go on the porch one more time and hear about this Mike Campbell, because that's all anybody ever talked about on the porch was Mike Campbell. The genius of Tom Petty and Mike Campbell for like a year and a half, 2 years. Pretty solid. Well, that's not music snobbery. That's class A, right down the middle of the road.
Otto, do you remember how you crossed paths with Robby? Were you also across the hall from Mark Heidinger's place?
So when I first started recording, I had an apartment across from the Kappa House over there on Maxwell, and he came over with, I think it was with Earl Krim and his band from high school. Maybe he was like 16. He was pretty young, and then I had a band called the Blueberries for years, and he was a big fan of that. And so he was always at our shows and stuff. Actually, I think one of the first times he ever had a drink was at our show. He got pretty drunk, and I think he got up and sang "You Shook Me All Night Long" with us, which was pretty fun.
I feel like that came up earlier in the show today.
Yeah,
maybe.
Well, that was a big night. I remember seeing him. I was like, what is going on with Robby? Because he was like straight edge through high school. No drinking, no cigarettes, nothing. And so, yeah, that was a big night. I remember him just loving it. But yeah, so I met him recording, and he started playing drums with my friend Paul Kopaz, and recorded him too, and just bands like that. And then when Pontius Co-Pilot got together and Scourge, I did their first recordings. So he was always involved that way, And then just he took care of our daughters too. When they were young, we used to have him sometimes get them from school or babysit for us, when we needed desperately to get out of the house. So
there needs to be a book written about the legendary position of rock and roll babysitter.
Yeah, well, he raised some eyebrows at Maxwell Elementary for sure, coming to pick him up. Yeah, he'd come with his sleeveless cutoffs and his tats and everything, but they, everybody's different. Everybody's got their thing. Maxwell is a very open place. It used to be anyway. I don't know what it is now. That was a long time ago when I had little kids. But
Uncle Robby is a whole other Robby.
That's true.
We could have an hour-long conversation about Uncle Robby because he really was that.
Oh, for sure.
He was that for a lot of people. He was that special person.
Oh, he's great with kids. He was great with kids. He was super sweet and always had joy in being around children. And you could just tell he just loved being around them. They're hilarious after all.
Otto, do you have any? It's kind of overly broad, but we've got about 10 minutes left in the show, and I'm wondering if you have, a particularly fond. I know you have tons of them, but a particularly fond memory of working with Robby, or maybe even a non-work moment. I don't know.
Well, I mean, there's so many. I mean, so we kind of Robby was for a long time somewhat out of my life because he was touring a lot and playing with Tom and Mark, and just kind of he was either working and traveling a lot and or doing other stuff. So we didn't really hang out much until right before COVID. We started hanging out again and really spending some time together again, and which was awesome. And we got to reconnect and stuff. And then, of course, through the illness and stuff. But I mean, just that whole experience of getting to be deep with him like that, and really getting to know him again as an older person. Like I said before, it was a pretty nice. I mean, it was terrible circumstances, but just the gift of becoming that much closer with him at that time, because I always loved him. I felt like we were pretty well connected. People just come and go sometimes in your life, and that happened. But I was lucky enough to get back with him and be able to help him through this thing, and it's I don't know, I feel pretty lucky considering, just generally speaking. I feel like all the time we all sat with him on the porch, Tom and Mark and all these other friends you've heard speak. I don't know, he came to a place at the end of his life where he was real comfortable, I think it seemed to me. And I'm glad I got to be with him. So
I'm just going to chime in here and say a huge part of the reason he was as comfortable as you indicated is because of the grace and generosity and love that you and Kristen showed him.
Well, we got paid really well.
I'm
joking.
You did.
Joking.
You got paid. You got paid with his company, which
paid
is
with
priceless. Yeah.
And,
Better than gold.
Of course. Yeah. I like to make jokes because I think it's good to laugh,
Yeah.
Now, Kristen, who isn't here, and she's going to hear about that from me, but she's done so much. You all have done so much. I'm kidding, by the way. But like, she sent me this, any band connected to Fanged Robot, she sent me this Google Doc. I can't even begin.
Oh yeah.
Like, we don't have time. If this was the beginning of the show, for me to this list, it just goes on and on and on. It's just incredible.
It is incredible. He was around, man.
So as we kind of wrap up, I guess I should somehow we're going to have to come up with the last song to play for this show, that is. And before we do, I want to let everyone know again, or have you all let everyone know again, what's happening on Saturday, because that is when a real celebration, public celebration of Robby is happening, right?
Yeah. Hey guys.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, do you want to chime in here?
Your audio connection is the best. You do it.
About Saturday.
Yeah.
Saturday, it's really celebrating releasing Robby's double LP on vinyl and then also digital. It will be on streaming at some point. The whole thing is a fundraiser for the Tate's Creek marching band. And they're actually naming a practice room after Robby too, which is really special. And so we've all sort of assembled. I think it's 10 full bands in various configurations of people playing the songs of the Fanged Robot, and also some selected special covers.
Mm-hmm.
And doors are at 6. Mark's dog has some notes. Doors are at 6 o'clock. The show is going to start at 6:45, and there are a whole lot of bands and special guests, and it is quite the undertaking, and it will be incredibly special.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. We're going to start early, so make sure and come down early, and all kinds of special video, and there'll be pictures everywhere, and merch. So bring your money. And I went and looked at the practice room at Tate's Creek. Kristen and I did, and met them there. And so we got to see it, and they're going to make a plaque and everything in there and have a little explanation of it. It's going to be awesome. So now all these kids will remember him forever with that. And and with records that are about to come out and all the music that everybody's going to get to hear. So it's awesome.
It sounds fantastic. I want to thank you all for joining me, and for doing this, and mostly Robby for just being so so unforgettable.
Yeah, he was an awesome man.
Thank you, Nick.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
I'm going to play a small batch track to close things out. I think I'll play Jubilee, which is a Gene Ritchie song.
Awesome.
And thanks again, Mark Heidinger, Tom Hnatow, Otto Helmuth, Andrew English, Justin Craig, and am I forgetting anyone? I hope not. But
Cast
yeah,
of millions.
Wonderful. Well, cast of millions. So we'll catch you next time. This is Trivial Thursdays on WRFL, and thanks again to everybody for tuning in and joining us. And we're going to leave you with this track from Small Batch. This is from their True Loves EP, and this is Jubilee. Have a great day.
See you guys. Thanks. Off. Let's see. Great.
All out on the railroad, it's all out on the sea, all out on the railroad, as far as I can see. Swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee. Hardest work I ever done, working on the farm. Easiest work I ever done, laying my true love's arms. Swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee. Coffee grows on a white oak tree, sugar and some brandy. Boys are pure as lump of gold, girls as sweet as candy. Swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee. If I had me a needle and thread, fine as I could sew, I'd sew my true love to my side, down the creek we'd go. Swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee. If I had no horse to ride, I'd be found a-crawling up and down this rocky road, searching for my darling. Swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee. Some will come on Saturday night, some will come on Sunday. If you give them half a chance, they'll be back on Monday. Swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee. I won't have no widow man, neither will my cousin. You can get such stuff that's at 15 cents a dozen. Swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee. All out on the old railroad, all out on the sea. It's all out on the old railroad, as far as I can see. Swing and turn, Jubilee, live and learn, Jubilee. Swing and turn,